Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, let's just give a couple of minutes for people to join, and then we'll begin. Hi, Sal. I'm just gonna give people a couple of minutes to join. Hi, Mike. Hi, Thomas.
Good morning, Mark. This is Tom. I was typing, so I didn't want to chatter the whole group there.
That's all right. All right. I will say we'll start, and those joining late will catch up. So welcome to today's installment. First of all, I'm not going to be here in 2 weeks' time, so you'll need to proceed without me. I'm going on vacation.
You're entitled once in a while.
Yeah.
Where are you going? You can tell us.
I'm going to Japan. So yeah, 10 for 10 days, and the time difference isn't insane. And I have no idea what I'll be doing at any point in time, so I cannot sign up to go to a meeting.
Quite right too. Take your time off.
I think so, yeah. But the show must go on. So absent somebody else having something urgent they want to bring up, now is a good time. We're going to attempt to finalize the attestation verification service governance pattern, and then we'll see in the available time. We may have a couple of other minor cleanup things to do. Following this one, I think we need to start talking about there are other things in the pipeline that just want to drop some seeds. Perhaps they'll sprout. I would like to start a conversation which is going to be actually much more complex about observability, logs, events, triggers, other things. Again, how we're doing them in the confidential environment, metrics, and how much information can leak through these observability side channels. So it's a good conversation to have. And then we at some point in time also need to talk about this really nasty one. It's mandated for regulated institutions. It's break and inspect. This is why, for instance, token binding in SSL couldn't be deployed by banks. Eventually, Google dropped it from Chrome, and then it died. It was a really fantastic RFC, but couldn't be implemented for reasons just stated, which I personally disagree with. But the fact remains that for confidential computing environments, we will need break and inspect, and we'll need to figure out how to govern.
Could you just say what break and inspect means, please?
So break and inspect effectively means if two parties are having a conversation, there is a trusted intermediary, like a reverse proxy, effectively, that may, inspect all traffic. So break means it's a break in a secure channel, and inspect means information might be inspected for data leakage prevention purposes or what have you. So it's an unfortunate artifact of life. All right. So again, I'm collecting my thoughts on those. In due time will present them, but I would like to get some of our existing in-flight things landed, so we don't have too many. So let me share my application here, and let me know if you see it, or I need to perhaps zoom in a little bit.
Zoom in one step would be nice.
Okay, let me see what I can do here. How's this?
Good.
Yeah. All right. So let's get going. So effectively, like we always do, we're going to go through comments, and then we'll see how much of this we can close. I want to leave this one for last. So incorporating multiple CPUs, GPUs. I didn't even realize it was my comment. I would have added the text before the meeting, but okay. Steve, your comment here, discussing federated AVSs.
Yeah, I think if we're going to talk about an AVS service, we definitely need to. NVIDIA's attestation is currently a bunch of Python code that you need to wrap into your application that calls their service, and you've got to then incorporate that into whatever else you're doing. So that's just the simplest example. But MAA and ITA, I thought, were two other examples, right? There's proprietary KMS, if you want to include AWS. All have unique capabilities that they offer that somebody might want to include in their verification.
So, okay. So on the first thing that you just said, NVIDIA doing some things on the client, this is service governance pattern. So I guess I don't quite see why, like we're effectively talking about generically, like an AVS may have a policy, AVS may need to maintain certain logs, AVS may be in control of certain keys, it may have an administrator with certain rights. The composition of a device in this case is outside the scope, like maybe in scope for other things, sure. I do not know if it's in scope for the AVS governance, but, again, let me know if you disagree or if maybe there is an impact that I'm not seeing. I also want to know what is the MAA and ITA.
MAA is Microsoft's attestation
Okay.
service, and ITA is Intel Trust Authority.
Mm-hmm.
MAA, when you get an attestation report in Azure, it's not the raw attestation report. You get an attestation report that comes from their BIOS, and that works with MAA. ITA is the token service that Intel has stood up. And so you may have multiple services that are required in a system.
So how is governance of this aggregate different from governance of an individual, I suppose, is what the document would not need to answer?
It may not be. It's from a practical point of view, it's something I've got to worry about a lot because if I just take ARM's attestation process is different than Intel and AMD's. And NVIDIA's is different than the other two I just described. So there's not a common, there may be a logical verification service you want to apply to your application. But if you don't have a homogeneous set of chips, you're going to have a mixed set of attestation that's required.
Right. So from the perspective of governance, the best way I can describe it, we would like to make it domain specific, but technology agnostic. So I can see how federation may be a thing that all attestation services need to worry about. Now, we unless governance differs, significantly. And Sal, I see your hand. I'll let you have the floor in a sec. So unless governance is distinctly different based on whether you're dealing with ARM versus Intel, then the document is not the right place to highlight that, because again, we're talking about I have policy. I would like to know the history of my policies. We don't get into what's in the policy. Sal, what did you want to say?
Yeah, my quick note on this came up just yesterday on the CSA call because they're trying to finish up the terminology and they assigned this specifically to us, so ABS. So I think if we can, in tandem, build a formal and brief definition of the ABS, I think that helps us to say, all right, there's differentiation in the implementation of that if possible. And then we can write a pattern that's clear. But yeah, go ahead.
Does RATS talk about AVS or define it? I mean, it should. It doesn't. Sorry?
You're on mute, Mike.
I don't think it does, no. Not what I've looked at. So can I just, I mentioned in the meeting yesterday that I've been putting together a document on attestation, and part of it is a possible description of what capabilities an AVS might offer. Can I just share my screen briefly?
Yeah,
and I'll try and
please.
show you where I've got that. Let me share, and it's this one. So this is just my thoughts, but I've come up with 11 different capabilities that I kind of thought that an AVS might want, some of which may be irrelevant to this document, some of which may be irrelevant to what Sal was mentioning, but some of which may play in. So I'll just go them briefly. First one is organizational independence, so which is one thing that you might want to be able to prove. The other thing is that you can measure the entire stack. That's a capability that none of these things are necessarily required, but they're things that you might want to specify when you're looking for an AVS, right?
Yeah, and by
is,
stack measurement, you mean attester stack measurement, not the AVS stack measurement.
The verification should allow.
Right.
Yeah,
so
okay.
attester,
so I haven't really separated them very
measurement.
well here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, it's attester stack measurement. Okay. Fine.
Yeah. Let's do a test. Full stack measurement. Okay. Availability, which is kind of plays into the performance, scalability, and availability. I've just said SLA type stuff. So target visibility. This is, what things are you able to attest? What measurements are you ready? What targets have you measuring check, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next one is being able to add targets. I want to say I want to be able to attest this workload. How do I add that? The next one is being able to deprecate targets, right?
What is an attestation target again?
So in the way I'm talking about, if you're measuring something, right? And so you need to know what things you're measuring to decide whether they're okay or not, right?
Okay.
So I've called that a target. Yep. So let's say
what thing you're measuring.
Let's say I have 5 different VMs, okay, which I may be loading and I want to attest. Each of those is a target because I need to have a measurement that I can check against. I need basically a good list, right? And so they are all targets in the context of what I'm talking about here. Does that make sense?
It's what we've been calling a workload.
Yes, I think it probably is what you've been calling a workload in this context.
Okay, I'm quite confused about number 5, honestly, because I thought the attestation verification service doesn't need to have a an understanding of all the things that might attest against it. Ultimately, anyone who can connect and present like measurements and ought to have their measurements validated.
Again, it depends on what you expect this to do, because you can either say, I already have a measurement is 2 bits, right? A measurement is the hash and a signature on the hash. Yeah. Fair?
Sure.
Okay. So the question is whether you include the hash, possible hashes in the AVS. And there's lots of use cases where you absolutely want to do that.
Are the reference values you're talking about here?
Yes,
Yes.
they have reference values.
Okay,
For
so
known good
is that
work.
what you're, but like, so from the point of view of a service that takes some inputs which it evaluates, ultimately this is a question of policy. So in the pattern document we talk about policies, right? So you ought to be able to maintain a history of policies. You know, like things like this, and so reference values are effectively in this case part of your policy, so it's
Okay,
kind
so
of covered.
I'm not approaching this from the GRC
I see. Okay.
point of view. Okay, this is from as a consumer of an attestation service. These are capabilities that I might want to have available in the attestation service. So I'm
I
not
see.
saying that all of these necessarily mapped to what the work that you guys are doing. I just want to expose them to you as possible.
Okay.
Which means I can probably go through these fairly quickly, some of them. So the deprecability is saying, okay, I think you shouldn't be doing this anymore. Revoked is this is not. Tenant anonymity, and that is to say, if I go to attestation service, I don't want other users of that attestation service to know who I am. Verification auditability. Yeah, so this is to say I got an attestation in. I can say this is a yes or a no to this particular thing. Again, this may or may not be relevant to you guys. Ability to act as certificate service, again, probably not relevant. And policy management, whether the attestation service has policies associated with it itself. So again, I'm really not saying all of these are relevant, but I just wanted to expose them to you guys as possible things.
Right. So these look more like functional requirements to an attestation service.
Yes,
so,
they are. That's exactly what I'm doing. And if you don't like them, that's fine. We can ignore them completely.
I actually think the direction is going to be in the other way here. So so if an attestation service is used by a regulated institution and is in need of governance, then the governance requirements of the attestation service become the functional requirements for the purposes of the document you're composing.
Yeah, I love that. So what I'm hoping to do is that I can use some of the things in your in the governance document to improve this document. That's what I'm expecting, but I just wanted to see if there's anything you want to take in the other direction. I think the answer is probably no at this point.
I don't see one unless someone else does.
Perfect. That's great.
Okay.
Sorry to take the time.
No, this is all good. So again, we're gonna switch back to the document we were just reviewing. So,
and with all that, I'm sold that the service description doesn't really care what the underlying technology is. And if you need a federated approach to deliver on the goals, so be it.
perhaps actually work with Mike to put federation requirements into the functional requirements of an attestation service.
I'd like to understand, Steve, more what you have in mind there. Could you just drop me an email and we'll start a thread and I'll use that as input into that document? That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Sure. So, I mean, the thing I'm after is a lot of times when we talk about attestation, we talk simplistically about a single enclave. And yet any real system is going to be made up of hundreds or thousands of enclaves, and they won't necessarily be identical in terms of their technical makeup. You may have enclaves on the edge running on one CPU style. You may have enclaves in the core of a backend server that are running on a different tech stack. You may have GPUs in the mix of the thing, and those have different technical requirements in terms of how you actually do attestation and what are the capabilities of attestation of those individual devices, but does not matter at all when you step back and you look at the system as a whole.
Sure. So let's take this out of this conversation and have a side thread. If anyone else wants to be involved, put your hand up and we'll add you to that thread. That's great. Thanks, Steve. Love it.
So with your permission, Steve, I will close this comment because it goes more towards the functional requirements. That's okay?
Right. Yep.
Okay. All right. So here's a question that I asked, whether we need to care about listing performance and scalability. Like I talk about availability specifically because it is back at Microsoft, we used to call these sorts of things dial tone services. So you can't assume existence of other things. You know, they have to be highly available and they have to come up first and these sorts of things because nothing works without them. I just don't know if performance scalability are a part of governance necessarily.
So I think availability is without the attestation verification service, you can't start a workload. So whether we need to include
so if you see, I already list availability, performance, and scalability.
Yep.
So perhaps just close it then because it's already
the other
kind of
thing I was
listed.
trying to think about was HP has a concept they call FLIRPs, functionality, localization, usability, reliability, performance, and scalability. So all enterprise systems, you have to worry about FLIRPs. Have you checked all the boxes?
Yeah, but usability is not part of governance. Again, it's a functional requirement. So it is absolutely essential in designing the service, but here the scope is limited. So, okay. Actually, this comment I'm thinking about removing because I don't because I think we're generic enough that this becomes again more of a functional requirement. So we'll just kill it. Oh, all right. So let's see. There was a comment again from me. I already added that. So if
and honestly, I don't know that performance and scalability, those may show up at a functional level as opposed to what is an AVS? What are the requirements that define it? Without availability, you can't get a workload started.
Right.
Performance is something that's going to have different expectations for different folks in different situations.
Well, right. If you have AVS as backed up, you're not it's like basically insufficient performance can translate into lack of availability. Like I need my attestation results now. Like I'm traveling next week, where's my passport? Right. So that's why I'm already put it under high availability, that you need to make sure that it has the resources. And again, this is a question of governance because you are, as administrator of the thing, you're in control of the resources it has.
If you're gonna put computing and storage, please add network to that.
Computing, networking, and storage resources. Okay. So I'll close this one. We'll move on. Lifecycle management and backup. Where was that? Should we say something about that here? If you can quickly scan the text. So Steve, you had something to say on that.
Yep. You've got confidential AVS, the signing and encryption keys, and so the AVS function itself, what the hardware provides, is kind of defined. You don't need additional keys on top of that. And so which encryption keys are you talking about? Which signing
encryption key would be for protecting data at rest, right? So if I have policies, and if somebody looks at my policies and says, oh, you're going to treat this vulnerable thing as valid, that may be an information disclosure attack, right? So it may be a thing that you want, like if you're protecting any data at rest, then you're managing encryption keys.
The question I have is the attestation verification service a key manager? in which case there's probably a whole bunch of requirements for key management that are required to be brought forward. Or is the
we
APS
don't know that.
verification service just dealing with policy, and then it's going to connect into a key manager that's going to provide the encryption keys?
Yeah, so I think that if there is if the AVS is acting as a CA, then yes, we need to worry about that. But if it's not, or if you consider it's a separate component, then we probably don't need to. Because I don't think, Mark, that necessarily all statements made by the AVS must be signed. Because, for instance, you might say that actually, as long as I've got an encrypted channel which has been verified to that AVS, then I trust the channel to provide me access to the correct thing, and therefore it doesn't need signing on top of that. And in many cases, you probably would want that, but I can see that it's not necessarily requirement in all cases.
So this is where we are saying, okay, so take a look at the B sub I. So again, we're not dictating the design of anything. We are saying if you have keys, if you have signing encryption keys, then the following considerations apply, right? We're not saying you must have these keys or you must have this functionality. So there is a should, again, not a must, that an AVS tenant bring their own keys for signing credentials or protecting logs at rest. So again, if the service allows these keys to be utilized, then I certainly know that regulated institutions may in some cases be required to bring their own keys into such environments and not trust, the default solution by the infrastructure provider. We definitely do that in other cases. So basically saying there is a service, it may have signing encryption functionality, not saying it does, but it may. And if it may, in that case,
I think it's fair to say in the case where the AVS is managing keys, then there should be a well-defined policy around key revocation and rotation. I think going any further than that probably isn't appropriate.
Correct.
This doc.
So what would you change?
If the AVS is going to manage keys, then it really should have all the same requirements that an HSM has.
Or well, don't think of it as an HSM. Think of it as a service. So something like a CA, a CA or HSM, right? Because it.
Yep.
You think, yeah, a service. So, but again, I think it's probably best to couch it in terms of something like where an AVS is maintaining keys, there must be well-defined policies around key management. It should be enough, right?
Okay, so I'm trying to see if the existing write-up as it is doesn't already say that. So think about it this way. We are not making a statement here whether the AVS is its own key management system or not. We are saying that a tenant may bring their own keys for their own purposes, right? Again, it's completely agnostic where they bring the keys from. We are saying that, if we're saying maintain confidentiality of these keys. Again, this is the so we don't have to say how.
Yeah, so I think confidentiality is one of the things I think should have appropriate key management. I think confidentiality is just one of the things because lifecycle management should cover that if it's done properly.
Okay. So how would I say that here?
Appropriate lifecycle management, including confidentiality, if you want to say that explicitly. I think that's fine. I think that gives you enough.
Okay.
Everyone else happy with that?
Yeah, I mean the way I'm thinking of it is the AVS functionality we're suggesting has the ability to act like a CA or an HSM and provide keys. If so, here are the requirements. And then how you implement that may in fact not be a single piece of code. It may be a attestation verification tool connected to an HSM.
Plus a whole bunch of key ceremonies and all the other stuff that you need to worry about.
The thoughts that ran through my mind when I wrote this in the first place is we as a company have avoided storing keys because there's a long list of requirements you have to manage.
Oh yeah, I have written key ceremonies for offline CAs, let alone online, and it's horrible.
We have peers in the industry who have taken a different tack that says, let's undercut the HSM market by using confidential compute and managing keys.
Yeah.
I think that's a dangerous way to go, that you want to convince the world that they want to throw their HSMs out and use your software. But everybody gets to come up with their own strategy. So this conversation for me this is a requirement of AVS's, but how you implement it is up in the air.
Yep.
Okay. So again, can I close this, or should we say additional things?
I think that's closable now. I think that's great.
Okay.
Thank you. Good work, Mark.
So next one is isolation from AVS administrator. Well, yeah, so Steve, you said should be true in singleton environments, and this is where I had this qualification, especially. So I'm not saying only.
Yep.
So to address your comment, this is where I believe it's already kind of implied that you may want to do it in all cases.
Why is it more important in multi-tenant environments? Because if it's not, okay.
So I suppose it's a difference between, you being the single driver of a car, or there being others.
I think my question is, does that phrase add anything, or is it does it actually weaken what you're saying? Does it imply a weakening for single use?
So okay, let me explain. So suppose we at JP Morgan decide to implement our own on-premise AVS in our data center. We are the only customer. In that case, the separation between the administrator of AVS policies and whoever's running the service, that's it's up to them. Still a should, but this is not going to be a primary consideration. In fact, we may even choose an AVS that's not multi-tenant, and if you administer one, you administer all. That's a reasonable thing to do. Now, if we're using a cloud AVS, multi-tenant cloud AVS, then I would be strongly looking at the fact that the administrator of the AVS is not in my TCB. And again, it's a should, because it's up to the customer to decide.
I wonder whether phrasing it the other way around is stronger. So isolation from AVS administrator should be achieved, though this may be less important in single tenant environments.
So the example I thought of, Mike, when this ran across, and maybe this will help in terms of which way to go. We sell our AVS tool as an on-prem solution, and we give it to customers and give them the option of where do they want to run it. Do they want to run it on-prem? Do they want to run it in the cloud? Do they want to run it with their workloads? And so it becomes a policy decision of the people that purchase the tool. There are multi-tenant systems out there like ITA, and clearly in a multi-tenant system like ITA, you don't want Intel to have access to your keys that are in the service. But if I sell a copy of this to a bank, and the bank's admin chooses they want rights to get access to it, that's a policy decision that they can make.
Yeah, I agree, and this is not a hill I'm going to die on. I just don't like watering down things, and it feels like this is watering something down a bit. So I said let's move on if we think it's okay, but that's my concern. I don't want people to look at this document and say, you know what, we're operating a single tenant environment, so I don't care about this because it says it's especially for multi-tenant. That's where I want to avoid.
Well, it's this is about formulating governance requirements, and this is a conversation between an institution and its auditor. And we should basically, a must is something that is, a that doesn't leave you any wiggle
You
room.
can't avoid it.
Should effectively. For instance, I say you should rotate keys. Yeah, it's a great practice. Like, why wouldn't you? And then the must is, in case of compromise.
Yeah, no, I assume we're using
no
standard
wiggle room.
RFC should, would, and must.
Correct.
So
That's
I get it. That's
on.
fine. I said I'm not going to die on this hill. Let's move on.
Okay.
I'll just explaining where I was.
Alec is not here today, so let's try and reason on his behalf. So
the other comment I had in terms of isolation is one thing you'll never be able to isolate from is a admin shutting down the service. And so if I have access to the physical machine, I can unplug it. I can do any manner of things. But what I don't have access to is I don't have access to the data. So I do think when you're talking about disconnection from the admin, somewhere I think we need to be able to talk about what does that isolation mean.
So I disagree, I think, Steve. I think you could absolutely design a service where a single admin or admins reported to the same boss cannot between them shut down a service, where you have anti-coercion and anti-collaboration distribution design to allow that. And I think that is a good thing to have if you care about it. And that counts as isolation for me.
So I think that's a compensating control. I think that's good. But as an attacker who's outside the circle of trust, I can shut down the network that goes to that environment.
Yeah,
I
think I do think here one of the things that we're trying to give is an explanation of the threat model here. All that we're saying, so when we're doing protection of administrator, it's a God class. It can be a situation where they can Jekyll and Hyde, right? They have all of the access. We can't control someone inside their own head, right? It's that sphere. We can't control that, but what we're trying to explain in this case, it may not be relevant to this document, but it probably does need to be stated, is that in a multi-tenant environment, more people can potentially get access to that administrator base. That is the concern here. So the multi-tenant model here can be an issue. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know if for this specific, this is a configuration argument. I don't.
Yeah, so maybe we drop it here, and I'm worrying about something that really just belongs in the definitions of the threat model for confidential compute in the first place. Confidential computing protects you against things that are in the circle of trust and allows you to narrowly define that circle of trust. But somebody who's outside the circle of trust can still impinge upon the behavior of the components that are in the circle of trust.
Yeah, and I would use the language tampering in this case. I mean, shutting it down is not really the issue, but even tampering is what we're concerned about.
So, I'm actually with, who said, I think it was Mike, that if you have a multi-node AVS and some rogue admin cuts the power to one of them, the system may still maintain high availability. If somebody tries to, like, took with Microsoft CCS, the Confidential Consortium Framework, like if one admin attempts to tamper, they will be overruled by the consortium, right? So we should not get into these details. And, by saying isolate from AVS administrator, and that should be achieved, how you do it, it's, there are in software design and distributed system design, we know how to deal with these things.
There are mitigations and mechanisms we could do.
Right.
Can
And
I just put
besides,
my hand up at this
confidential
point and say,
computing, in a second, confidential computing never, makes a guarantee against somebody cutting the power.
all I was going to say is, I want to put my hand up and say, if anyone knows anyone who wants to design systems like this, I want to be involved. I love this sort of stuff. It is absolutely what I live and breathe for. Designing these sorts of systems is me. So please, if you ever hear about anyone, just let me know, because I want to do it.
So I completely agree that we can put isolate here, and then as part of the general threat model that we describe as the CCC, what's inside the circle of trust and what's outside the circle of trust. The thought that ran through my head as we were talking about, well, we could put these compensating controls in place and then it will solve all these problems, or we can make it high availability and solve all these problems. That's exactly the road the secure multi-party compute people went down. Let's just spin up enough nodes and the hacker won't be able to compromise all the nodes, and our cryptocurrency will be secure. And I think we had 4 billion worth of cryptocurrency theft last year out of secure multi-party compute. It's either inside the circle of trust or it's outside the circle of trust. But I completely cede the point here that this document, isolation, should be the concept that we have for CCC isolation, and call that good.
So we're saying, calling this outside scope of definition, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what do we feel we should change here, if anything?
Let me reread his comment.
I think he's just saying we could trim if we want to, but we don't have to, is my reading of that. And I think we probably don't want to.
Yeah, so I think what Alec is saying is the same thing Amazon beats me up on all the time whenever we talk about Nitro enclaves. And they go, look, Nitro's already prevents an admin from getting access to anything. And Alec, representing another CSP, is going to say, our admins don't have access to anything. So why are we adding this redundant statement? And coming back to the threat model of confidential compute, this is a confidential compute, and we're providing a much stronger guarantee than what the CSPs are providing.
Yeah, I think it's fair to leave it in. And I think we're all happy to argue it. So
yep.
So close the comment.
Close it.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. We're almost done here.
We already argued and closed that one, so I'm not gonna say anything more.
All right. So this is in relation. I don't know if I can put them side by side. Just pay attention to 5, 7, 8, 11, and 12, because the rest are unchanged. So let me just pull this up. 5. So this is what AVS providers expect from component vendors, confidential application developers, managers, computing hardware owners, managers. So that's 5, 7, 8. 11 and 12 are AVS responsibilities to auditors and to the data owners and managers. So going back to this one. So sorry. So 5, 7, and 8. Securely maintain an on and proof record of all received reference values and policies. And this is on the input. So if anybody gives you a thing, this is the hardware that I'm running. These are the reference values.
So
etc.
What do you mean by honor in this context? I'm quite part of the fact you have missed out a U in it, but that's me. What do you mean by honor in this context?
Oh, I'm sorry. We are Americans. Okay, so honor as in, you give me a policy, I will execute in, I will actually execute this policy, not just, ignore it.
Yeah, but honoring a record doesn't seem to mean anything.
Right, you're correct. The wording is off. So security maintain
a tab-proof record of all received references and policies,
Now
and then
this,
a separate one is to honor the
and honor the policies.
I think that makes sense then. Fine. Sorry, that was just a bit of a nitpick, but I think it's worth.
Yes, no, this is good, of course. Yes. 11 is the responsibility to the data owners. Actually, I would probably, the responsibility to honor the policies is not to the those who provide the policies. They could care less. I'll probably just kill that here. When I say history, I'm not specifying how long a retention period. Perhaps I should probably say that because data retention is a governance thing.
There is no such thing as tamper-proof. Please don't use a phrase like that.
Tamper evident,
or tamper resistant.
How about tamper evident?
Yeah, tamper evident. I'm sorry. It's just again one of my bugbears.
And I was careful not to use things like log or ledger because that implies implementation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is absolutely the right way of doing it. Instead of the words up to a required retention period, you might want to use words like as meeting an agreed SLA, because things like it's not just the furnishing of it and how long it is, it's how quickly you do it. Because if someone could pressure you not to do it for 2 months, and that could cause forensic problems or whatever. So you want to have an SLA that covers this, right? Or at least some sort of agreement that that covers it. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we could say something. Let me just put that in quotes for now.
Yeah.
Within a
according to or
a specified SLA regarding retention period and timeliness, etc. I don't know if we want to go that way.
That's exactly the sort of thing, I think. And again, we don't know exactly what a particular auditor is going to require of a particular organization.
Well, this is to the owner of the data, which is they're similar to auditor, right? Because an auditor may be an outside entity.
The auditor is going to say, "I want this in 3 weeks," and if you go to your AVS and they say you can have it in 5 weeks, you've just kind of lost, right? Which is why you need to have some sort of agreement with them up front.
Yeah. Actually, you know what I'm inclined to do is just to take this out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Because 11 is just that, and then 11, 12. Put that back in here. Because then I don't have to duplicate the same wording, because ultimately it's the same. Okay.
I'm happy if you guys are. You folks. Sorry.
Yep.
I never know whether guys is considered gendered or not. Folks is good.
I don't think we should worry about that. To do. Incorporate key officers, custodians, managers. Should we say anything about that here? Because our personas are.
That seems like an implementation detail there, right?
Okay, I'm with you. Okay, so we're done here.
Good work.
I would then move this to after this meeting is over. Say how many? We have 10 minutes. I wanted to cover one other thing. Thank you for that. This is good. No more comments. The document is clean. Of course, always a live document, even if it's in the approved. Feel free to add.
But you need a first version at least.
Yeah, because the thing is, this is the one I want to take. And by the way, I'm not going to be at the next Attestation SIG meeting, which is 2 weeks from yesterday. And again, for the same reason, I'm out. I would love for someone from the SIG to attend the attestation SIG meeting, and because they already agreed to consider this document for their next.
So what I suggest is, assuming that I'm there, which I think I'm going to be. So what date is that? On the 13th or something?
Yes.
Yeah. So if I present that and alongside my document and say, look, you'll have a look at my document, but this one needs approving, they kind of fit together. So, and they're kind of different approaches to it. Steve, if everyone who's there, but I'm happy to sort of put it forward if you'd like, Mark. And I'm not here that often. That's the only thing.
That would be great. I'm not usually at the attestation meetings. I've got a conflict. I can make it on the 13th.
Okay, I think it would be great if you could. And Sal, I guess you're going to be there as well. Thomas, are you hoping to be there or?
Actually, I'm going to Colorado. So I'm getting out of Texas that I had to bus and going to Colorado. So won't be able to make time.
You will or you won't? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
I cannot.
Okay, excellent. Well, enjoy Colorado.
Yeah, it'll be in the beautiful wilderness of Colorado. That sounds great.
As opposed to the scary wilderness of the attestation SIG. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to bring up this because we still have this, although this is an approved pattern, we still have a couple of things. So Sal, I'm glad to have you here. We were going to say something about the fragility in reproducible builds.
Yeah, so I haven't been able to find a base document that covers that.
Okay.
So
How about this? I'm just going to close this document, but if you want to later add something to the references in this doc, just go ahead and make an edit.
Okay.
Mark, Steve, can you speak on Mark's behalf here? So we talked about trusted root store hygiene.
So Mark was making a similar comment I was making on the other side is which keys are we talking about? Are we talking about the data encryption keys that are really at the application layer? Or are we talking about keys associated with attestation?
Well, I would say that inside the payload, your trusted root store would be who do you establish or who do you trust for asymmetric cryptography, broadly speaking? So secure channels, but not only. Right. So for instance, somebody sends you an encrypted payload, and the encrypted payload is encrypted using a public, like a private key, the public key is in certificate, etc. So you can then know, do I trust the sender of this piece of data? And that would be in the trusted root store, right? So if you're going to have any kind of asymmetric communication, that is the trusted root store. It needs to be if you're trusting wrong inputs, you're basically done.
But this implies wherever the trusted root store is coming from, you need its measurements.
Correct. That's what we're saying.
If your trusted root store is an HSM, it won't necessarily have measurements.
So I don't know if your trusted root store is an HSM. So my write-up or this paragraph is written to basically say one or two things is true. Either the trusted root store is hard-coded into your payload, right? And in that case, well, the measurement of the payload will take care of it. Or the trusted root store, or whatever leads to it, but like it's effectively the point from which all the other trust springs, is given to the payload as a configuration parameter. So the exact same payload, same bits, deployed in two different locations might actually have two different root stores. In that case, that configuration parameter must be measured for purposes of attestation. That's really all it says. So
Yeah,
the first part of the sentence is how do you curate and procure it? And the second one is if it's a configuration parameter, then you also must include it in measurements. In either case, you need to carefully curate and procure it.
I'm dropping, folks.
Okay.
Great to see you, and a great conversation. Thanks a lot. See you.
So I would go ahead.
I don't I see the if that's generating the or clause that you're stating. I don't see a reason to not put it in place the way you've originally defined it. If anything comes up in comments, we'll deal with it then.
Okay. Sounds good. So we don't have anything else. Oh, this is a temporary work in progress link. So the very last thing I want to mention is if there is a final version of the, oh, sorry, not this one. The glossary is the final version. Never mind. The personas, I'm going to have to work on that. So I'm not going to worry about it right now. Okay. Thank you all very much. Again, I will see you in 4 weeks' time. I'm not going to be here in 2 weeks' time. And thank you very much for attending. I will then send off these documents of well, the attestation one to the SIG, the attestation SIG. And yeah, hopefully somebody can defend it in the attestation SIG in 2 weeks' time.
Sounds good. Two things. Mike and I will both be there for the attestation meetings. It should be a good chat. And we've wrangled some of them into a panel, so they should be more open to talk. And then number two, please do take a look at the terminology doc that I have linked there.
This one.
So the one that I have linked to our weekly meeting here, it's also in the meeting notes for the GRC this week.
But it's not this one?
No, so there's 2 documents. We've got the glossary that we've created. There's also a request for a broader set of terms, including ABS from CSA. So I have linked that here in this meeting. It's also linked to the notes for this.
Is that the second link that you put in chat?
Yes, yeah. So it's a Google Doc at this time. Yeah, go.
Computing terminology.
So this is from CSA, and they were leaning on our terminology, but this is a final request with slightly more terms. One of them is ABS, so I strongly suggest that I think it's at the bottom. I strongly suggest that we have a group input on this, and we'll be having a discussion on it on the same Tuesday as we do the attestation call. So there should be plenty to talk about in 4 weeks as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.